Well, I was reading a book that was written just recently published called Shame Unmasked by Rick Patterson. He's a local Kalamazoo guy. Many of you people may know him. He's a pastor in our classes here in Kalamazoo. And Rick I got to know him about 15 years ago when we began planning and dreaming about starting a new church. And Centerpoint played a very small role in this. This was pre-River Days with a new congregation called Within Reach. That congregation ran from about 2000 to 2010. And Rick has been visiting Centerpoint from time to time, and we've been friends. We talk in the gym and whatnot. And so one of the times he dropped off this new release, and I want to read the book, but it wasn't because of the title. In fact, the title kind of turned me off. Shame Unmasked. The reason why I wanted to read the book is because I like Rick. I like the way he rolls. I like the way that he won't be painted into a box. And I think more pastors need to be more real. And so I like Rick. I like him as a person. So I want to read the book. But I'm saying to myself as I'm picking up the book, I don't have any shame issues. So I'm just reading this book because I want to see what Rick wrote. And then God interrupts my perfectly planned idea that I don't have any shame issues. And as I was reading the book, I was finding that God was beginning to speak to me. And again, he doesn't speak in this kind of audible voice. It's more of an intuition, more of a prompting. I've said before that my signature sin is pride. I've been pretty open about this, and I can't tell you how many times I've mentioned that I have had a lifetime struggle with trying to keep pride in its place. In fact, I've even used the terminology of prideaholic. So I've tried to be in pride recovery and doing the kinds of things that I think are pretty helpful in trying to keep pride in my rearview mirror. But as I'm reading this book, God started to arouse in me this idea to consider, is it possible that you've been labeling your signature sin incorrectly? What if you've got it wrong, is what I kind of sense God saying to me. What if your true malady isn't pride, but it's shame? What if you've been treating the symptom rather than dealing with the root? Further, what if your discovery is something that I want to, this is God speaking, share with the whole congregation? That I want to awaken within Centerpoint this idea that rather than trying to deal with sinful behaviors, what we might call behavior modification, that we get closer to the root. Is it possible that shame is the root of all sin? You know some of my story. I was lean as a rail in high school. When you're a high school senior and you're 6'2" and 145 pounds, you don't like being 145 pounds. I'm just here to tell you, okay? And my body was built for running. And I was fast, but I ran cross country and track, not so much out of the love of the sport, but out of the love of the recognition attached to that sport. I loved the fact that I could fill my varsity jacket with medals, and the jingle of those medals down the hall of my high school served as a walking showcase. And I sensed maybe that God was trying to poke at me. You know how the Holy Spirit does this? And he's poking at me saying, is it possible that in all of your running, you were trying to run away from not being enough, from a label of shame? And what if when I got to college, I started lifting and lifting and lifting? I mean, insane amounts of weights, because I didn't want to be viewed as not enough, that I wanted to get out from underneath the weight of that label. And is it possible that when I came to what was then Third Reformed, is it possible that I worked crazy hours and did whatever it takes in order to grow the largest youth group in the city, that is it possible that some of that fuel was associated with this whole idea that I don't want you to not see me as being enough?
this question, am I enough? It's kind of a poetic question for me right now. Whenever I walk into a church building, any church building, the first question that goes into my head or through my head is, do I belong here? I think it's the first question that'll go through a lot of people's head if they're coming from outside the church into the church. Do I belong here? And after probably 3 years of lurking in the back, on and off, sometimes more off than on, the question is still in my head. Do I belong here? Even though you've put in writing, evidently, that I do. But just because you put something in writing doesn't change what's in my heart. The fear that if you really knew me. There's another voice in my head when I enter a church, and that voice says this: you failed. You failed as a pastor. You failed the church. You failed your denomination. Folks, this denomination, of which this church contributed mightily, this denomination put over $100,000 in me. They had a $100,000 bet in me as a church planter that I would deliver when it was over, a living, breathing congregation. And I failed. And that's going to leave a mark. But more importantly, I failed individual people. I failed individual people who are likely here right now. Some people insist, when I talk like this, they insist, Rick, you didn't fail. You didn't fail, as if failure is the enemy. And folks, failure is not the enemy. Failure is our friend. Failure is the means by which we actually grow and learn and mature. Failure matters. Failure is an incredibly significant part of our growth. Failure is not the enemy. The enemy is this voice in our head that says, because you failed, you are a failure. That's the enemy. And this enemy has a name. It's shame. It shows up pretty early in the Bible. It's Genesis 2, verse 25. The man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. Let's pray for a minute. Lord Jesus, am I enough? I think we both know the answer to that. The answer is no. But fortunately for everybody in this room, you are enough. And everybody in this room, including me, has come here to hear a word from you today, Lord, not a word from me. So may we all hear a word from you today, Lord. Maybe because of what I say, maybe despite what I say. But right here, right now, Lord, let us hear from you. In your name, amen. You're probably getting the flavor that I've got a lot of scars from shame. I have enough scars from shame to put in a book, evidently. I got psychological scars. I got spiritual scars. If you need a scar, I got a scar. You can borrow one after the service, all right? I've got physical scars. My most prominent physical shame scar is this lump on the back of my hand. It's called it's remnants of what they call a boxer's fracture. Any wild guesses how a fella ends up with a boxer's fracture? I hit a wall. Then I hit a door, both of which broke. So then I hit an old bookcase. I think that's what did my hand in. And I knew that next Sunday morning I was going to have to take the pulpit wearing a cast. And whenever you show up for the first time wearing a cast, what question do you get? What happened? And I thought, I am going to stand in front of those people completely naked, vulnerable, and exposed. They are going to see the real me. When I have to confess to them that I went into a fit of rage because my teenage daughter rolled her eyes at me. There will be no hiding who I am then. This lump, though, it set me on something of a quest. A quest to understand why I do what I do. Why do I have to break my hand on a wall? Why do I make decisions I make? Why do I choose things that are later going to hurt people, hurt myself, hurt my friends, family, hurt my God? Why do I make these decisions that later I'm going to regret making? And what I found was that the root of those decisions in my life has been consistently this voice called shame. And I knew that I couldn't just change my behavior. I knew that if I were going to kill the weed, so to speak, I'd have to get the root. So by example, when a teenage girl rolls her eyes at her dad, what is she telling her dad? Somebody said it. Where we said it? You're an idiot. Okay? And my daughter is small. She's looking, and I just want you to hear her voice. Dude, you are an idiot. Now, that voice, that message from your daughter, regardless of how many times a day it happens, is sought to be something a grown man can deal with. It's got to be something a grown man's going to have to deal with. But instead, inside of me, it wells up this defensive rage. So I have to ask myself, why am I so defensive right now? Why do I feel this way in my gut? Why is this happening to me? Why do I have to defend myself in front of this girl, my daughter? Why do I have to do this? But I feel like I do. And whenever somebody gets that defensive, this is something I learned from my wife. Anytime anybody gets that defensive, it's usually because they think maybe there's just some truth in what the accuser is saying. Maybe, just maybe, my daughter is right. I am an idiot. Oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. And she's discovered it. I actually don't know what I'm doing. We adopted these 4 kids, and I actually don't know how to parent. She's right. And I felt exposed. I felt found out. And when you feel found out, you lash out. That's what shame does. Because it wants to create a diversion. It wants to give you an escape path out of the situation you're in when you feel naked and feel shame. This quest I'm on matters to me, not just because of how it's affected me, but because it's how it's affected my whole family, my kids. This is a picture of my oldest daughter. Like I mentioned, we adopted her and her sisters and brother when they were in elementary school. And she brought to my attention one day when she was in elementary-ish, she announced to me that she was the ugly one. In a matter-of-fact way, in a way almost to acknowledge that maybe she won a prize. Hey, I'm the ugly one. I said, what are you talking about? She said, compared to my sisters, I'm the ugly one because my lips are fatter, My nose is wider, my skin is darker, and my hair's kinkier. And I thought, who told you that? What? So I did what any narcissistic, overachieving male will do. I fixed it. I said, you're wrong. By the way, anytime a girl is struggling with shame, what she wants to hear most is that she's wrong too. I changed the name. I said, I'm going to start calling you beautiful from now on, just so you know how wrong you are. It's a name she now has. She got it tattooed on her arm now. But I'm no longer naive enough to think just because you write something on your skin that it's going to erase the script that's been handed to you your entire life. But I realize this lump on my hand reminds me I'm no different. I'm the exact same. That every day that girl's going to have to do battle with that voice in her head telling her she's the ugly one. That my little girl's going to have to wake up every day and fight that voice. And she's going to make decisions based on that voice. She's going to do things that voice is commanding her to do to fend out, to prove to the world she is not the ugly one. And I shudder to think of the choices a young girl's going to make when she thinks she's the ugly one. Choices that she's going to regret the rest of her life. The kind of choices an adult man is going to make when he thinks he's the idiot. Choices that insist I overcompensate. Choices that insist I overfunction. Choices that insist I fix everything. Choices that insist I always be right about everything. Choices that insist I always be right about everything. Choices that insist I always be right about everything. Choices that you get the pattern here? How'd you like to be married to me? Somebody right now saying, I think I am. The man and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. How's that even possible? And here's what's weird, okay, is this little one phrase passage shows up after 24 full verses of creation of all weird things. So we have just come through everything talking about what God put into creation, 24 chapters, and on and on and on and on. He put this, he put this, he put this, he put that. And we come screaming to a halt at the one thing God did not put there. And as we come screeching to a halt here, we're teetering right on the ledge in front of the fall. Almost as if it's a warning, a clue about how the worst decision in the history of the world is about to happen. The last word we hear right before the worst decision in history is shame. Genesis 3, here we go, over the cliff. The serpent was more crafty than any other animal the Lord had made. He said to the woman, did God say you shouldn't eat from the tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we can eat from any of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, you shouldn't eat of the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die. The serpent said to the woman, you won't die, for God knows when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God. God knows that when you eat of it, you will have your not enoughness cured. I was going through this passage out on the East Coast. I was doing a sales training out there for my job, and I was at dinner with a couple of salespeople, and I was going through this passage just kind of like I'm going through it with you right now. And we got to this part of the passage right here. And I said, what do you think the snake was actually saying to Eve right here? You will be like God. And this young woman, female salesperson, without skipping a beat, without blushing, without anything, without hesitation, she says, you're not enough. That's what the snake was saying to Eve. You're not enough. as if she'd heard the voice in her own head over and over and over again her whole life. This woman saw the first time in recorded history when a woman looks in the mirror and has that thought register in her head, I am not enough, and realizes, I got to be about fixing this. I got to make this right. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was a delight to the eyes, that the tree was desired to make one wise, when she saw that it was desired to make one wise, when she saw that it was capable of fixing her shortcomings, when she saw that it was capable of overcoming her not enoughness, and you could see the first bad decision in shame is about to hit. She took its fruit and she ate. She also gave some to her husband, which I find a little judgmental, which happens with shame. There's really nothing shame enjoys more than finding somebody who's worse off than we are, dumber, uglier, whatever. Okay? And she looks over at her husband and says, you're not quite enough either. Somehow it gives us some solace to know other people are not enough too. And he ate it. And here comes the outcome. Then their eyes were opened, they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. The outcome is here. It's self-hatred. It's suddenly a need to hide who we are because we just don't like it. We don't want anybody else to see it. These fig leaves, Jeff called his pride, for example. These things we hide behind. Defensiveness, rage, racism, narcissism. Always got to be rightism. All this stuff we hide behind. And you can see the destruction in the right next verse. They heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden. They hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees. But the Lord called to the man and said to him, where are you? And he said this, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I hid myself. I hid myself. Why did you hide yourself? Why did you hide yourself? Why did you hide yourself? Because I was afraid, he says. Afraid of what? Afraid of the fact that you just ate an apple when I told you not to? Afraid of you touched the tree I told you not to touch? Nope, that's not it. Are you afraid because you listened to your wife? Nope, that's not it. Are you afraid because now you're in big trouble? Nope, that's not it. Well, why are you afraid? Because I'm naked. And what he's really saying is, when you see the real me, you're going to abandon me. That's my real fear. And it's going to be better if I leave you first. And friends, that's the outcome of shame. I had to ground that daughter I showed you when she was in middle school. She had worn some clothes to school that were inappropriate. I went down to the middle school, I got all the kids in the car, and she starts going into a fit, starts kicking the back of my seat of my fancy 1987 Cutlass Sierra, lovingly named Old Gold. And eventually the seat came unhinged, because she's a feisty one, and she leg pressed me into the steering wheel. I thought, okay, this isn't going to work. So I pull over, tell my son, you get in the back, Talana, you get in the front. Talana gets in the front. We're going down the road again, and she starts kicking me. Except she misses once as we're going down the road, and she kicks the gear shifter from drive into park. That'll bring you to a quick stop. And I looked over, and she was so mad, so upset, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, I turned my bald head into her like this, and I said, just let it out. And she went, until she was just exhausted, till her hands hurt. Called my wife, you need to come get us. We take all the rest of the kids home. We're going to take Talana to the doctor in the Suburban. We drive by my wife's school. She's got to lock her building up. It's dark. I'm waiting in the car in the front seat. She's in the back, third seat. And I hear this voice from the third seat. And the voice says this: "Do you hate me?" She doesn't ask, "Do you hate what I did?" She said, "Do you hate me?" That's the voice of shame. And the question she didn't ask is the question Adam didn't ask in the fall was, now that you have seen the real me, are you going to abandon me? Shame's got one last ugly turn for us, and that's blame. This is in verse 11. God said, "Who told you you were naked? Who told you you were the ugly one? Who told you these things about yourself? Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you not to eat?" The man said, he gets a twofer in the blame category here. "The woman you gave me." When we blame, we are holding up somebody in front of whoever's looking at us who we hope is uglier than us, so that nobody will see us hiding there. Then the Lord said to the woman, this is her opportunity for blame, "What is this that you've done?" He doesn't say, "Who is this that you are?" You see that? He knows who she is. He made her. "I know exactly who you are, and you are good." He doesn't say, "What is this that you have done?" He doesn't say, "What is this?" He says, "What is this that you have done?" Guilt says this. Guilt says, "I did something bad." Shame says this: "You are something bad." Guilt says you made a mistake. Shame says you are a mistake. And this is where it leaves us. Separated from God, hiding from each other, full of self-hatred and blame, making decisions all because of this lie that says being not enough is a bad thing, and you better be about fixing it. Even the whole while, God said, "You are good."
I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Don't
So I've already messed up, John. I'm out of time.
Go for it. Keep going. You're all good.
I practiced this so much, and it was right on time every time I practiced it. But I wanted to show you something, okay? I wanted to show you the power that shame has to steal, okay? If you can, I want you to picture, look at this, don't picture, look at this. I'm going to pay for this later. If this person can believe about themselves that they are the ugly one, imagine the power that shame has to steal whatever it wants from you. Imagine the power. I want to show you something else. Jeff, can you come up here? Jeff's like, oh, this wasn't in the plan either. So, oh, you stay there. You stay there. Jeff, Talana, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. Nice to meet you.
I'm never coming back, I don't think. So, one time I had a conversation with Jeff. I don't think it was confidential, but here we go. I don't remember even what we were talking about, but he said to me, he said, Rick, I am as dumb as a box of rocks. And I laughed a little bit like that. And he said, no, dude, I'm totally serious. I am as dumb as a box of rocks. Jeff, how many college degrees do you have?
A couple.
How many college degrees? You see where I'm going with this? How many college degrees do you have? I should have been a lawyer, not a preacher, by the way. How many college degrees do you have?
I have a doctorate.
You have how many?
I have a college, a seminary, and a doctorate.
A doctorate, yeah. How long have you been the pastor here at one of the largest churches in Kalamazoo?
33 years.
33 years. I have been the pastor here at one of the largest churches in Kalamazoo. So the evidence that you are presenting that you are as dumb as a box of rocks is about equivalent to the evidence my daughter's presenting that she's the ugly one. Okay? You're both hosed. Now, here's what I want you all to see in this, okay? Physically, do you see any similarities between these two people? The answer is no. Okay. They're different races. They're different genders. They are way different ages.
Thanks.
Guilt sometimes tells the truth. Shame never tells the truth. They are different socioeconomic classes. They had different family upbringings. Jeff, were you ever a ward of the state?
No.
No. And yet, you see these two people that are so different, such radically different upbringings from radically different places, and we see that shame resides regardless of where you came from, regardless of your gender, regardless of your race, regardless of your age, regardless of your physical act. This is something that started in Adam and Eve, okay? Now, I never know much about Eve's upbringing, but I got a feeling it wasn't terrible. I don't think Eve's carrying a lot of baggage from youth. Okay? This is part of what it means to be human. Now, the thing that these two have in common is they are doing battle with this voice in their head that is insisting that they make decisions they're going to later regret. That they attempt to hide this fear that I'm the ugly one or that I'm dumb as a box of rocks. And they are going to be part of this battle, okay, for the rest of their lives. Battling this thing that we all share with all of humanity. Now, this battle and how to win this battle is what the next 2 weeks are about. But right now, we have an opportunity in front of us to participate in that battle. Communion is our opportunity to participate in this battle. Communion brings us together around our neediness of all things, around the fact that we actually are not enough. Communion brings us together
to remind us that we are in need. All of us together. And in that moment, as we come together, we are doing the exact opposite of what shame has dictated we do, which is separate and hide. We can come together in this moment around our neediness to be reminded of this most important thing, that in our neediness, not only has